Okay, let's get started. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Identify Your Most Valuable Customer from Many Data Sources for Thousands of Business Consumers. I'm Laurel Ackerman, a Marketing Director at AtScale. And before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. All participants are in listen-only mode. You can use the chat to submit questions. This webinar is being recorded and all registrants will be sent the recorded version of this webinar after the event. We will be opening up for Q&A. So as I said, please add your questions in the chat box at the bottom of the screen and we'll take them all at the end of the presentation. So for today's webinar, we will learn how to first determine what makes a most valuable customer, or MVC, and what knowing that means for your business. We'll learn how to solve the most common problems in calculating MVCs, which include data consistency and granularity. We'll learn how to easily define customer metrics and attributes you may not have thought of or be thinking about today. And we'll get consistent data from multiple data sources for determining your most valuable customers. So now I'd like to introduce you to today's presenters. Jen Stirrup is an award-winning and internationally recognized BI and data visualization expert, author, data strategist, and technical community advocate. She's been honored repeatedly, along with receiving peer recognition, as a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional in SQL Server. And Jen has nearly 20 years of experience in delivering BI and data visualization projects for companies of all sizes across the world. Dave Mariani is co-founder and chief strategy officer of AtScale. And prior to AtScale, Dave was VP of engineering at Clout and at Yahoo, where he built the world's largest multidimensional cube for BI on Hadoop. Dave's a big data visionary and serial entrepreneur. So now I am going to turn the presentation over to Jen.
Hello there and welcome to this session. In this topic, we will take a look at who is our most valuable customer. When we look around us in the business world, there's so many different interpretations of your most valuable customer. They could be influencers, your best salespeople by advocating for you. They could be measured in terms of their lifetime value, their transaction value, purchase frequency, and so on. So you may have heard it said that your best salespeople are in fact your customers. Are they talking about you in social media? Are they external change agents feeding back to your organisation ways in which your products and solutions can be used? Knowing your customer means that you can really take control of your customer experience. This is very important when they're talking about you and potentially influencing others as well. The reality is that customers are changing. It's not just value for money anymore. It's about value for experience. Their brand, advocacy, and recommendations can create onward revenue for you. Now, normally in traditional environments, customers are normally measured by a number of metrics, including their transaction value, their purchase frequency, or their lifetime value. But customers are changing and we need to keep up with this. Customers care about their ease of access to you, and that can show up in disparate data points such as loyalty, repeat purchase intention, their willingness to recommend your brand, or they could say something very unique about your business. So how do you know that you are working on the right customers? There's so many different ways that the customer voice is present in your data. If you are not looking through your data in different ways, then you're missing opportunities for the ways in which your customers are speaking. It's not just customer FOMO, fear of missing out. It's an important strategic method of trying to get to know your customers better. The reality is that your data sources are crucial. It's very true that the statement garbage in, garbage out applies to data and database systems. What sort of things need to be in place? Let's have a look at some practical questions that you can look when you start to consider your data sources. So, for example, do you have all the data that you want in order to understand your customer better? Are there data sources that you can't access? In terms of that data, how complete is it? What data points are you missing? What columns couldn't you live without? If you can answer that, that starts to tell you about the priority of certain things to you when you consider your customer. Do you ignore some columns because they're usually incorrect? And how often do you have to guess what the data might be? How many customer records really have all of the data that you need? So we're not just thinking about one data source, we're thinking about different data sources, and that data could be tucked into Excel, it could be in databases, it could be in third-party solutions. The main thing is, how can you bring all of those data points together in order to help you to build that coherent message in terms of your customer? You might find that some of the data points are inconsistent. They tell you different things. Analysing the data properly through effective data modelling can help you to understand the inconsistencies better. Some of those inconsistencies may come from the ways in which the business actually use those terms inconsistently across the organisation. For example, does the same business term apply equally across all departments? Do people use the same terminology to mean the same thing? Further, is it easy to share reports? Is it easy to get the reports that you need? And when you receive a shared report, does it match the customer data in your own reports? All of these things together can help you to understand your most valuable customer. You will be able to see if your business departments actually understand what that concept is, and it will help you to see whether the most valuable customer is considered in the same way across different departments. For example, marketing may consider your most valuable customers to be a certain group of customers. Your sales team, on the other hand, may find that there's something different going on, and they may regard a different set of customers as being the most valuable customers. That's why consistency is so important. And being consistent will help you in your organisation to identify a unified picture of what that customer looks like. One key thing in finding out your most valuable customer is agility. We can look at it in terms of how often the data is updated, and also how easy it is to get the data that you want. As businesses have moved forward in the time of COVID, digital transformation is happening very quickly, and the most valuable customer may change very quickly over time as your organisation responds to the challenges that you have in your organisation. So how long does it take you to get new data that you want? And how often do you get the updates that you require with fresh data? And are you able to have the interactions that you need with your data, such as drill downs? Now, if you can't get a customer to tick the most important criteria for you, then maybe you need to think about making the decision over why you are working so hard on them. So identifying your most valuable customer is really the result of doing analytics on your data and having an open mind It's important to be data-driven, and it's also important to be insights-driven as well. You can be inspired by the insights in the data that you find, and also inspired by the context in which the data lives. Having a unified vision of your most valuable customer can help align your business departments in terms of the direction of the company. It means you're all working hard on the same set of customers. So once you've agreed your vision of your most valuable customer, you can be open to new interpretations. The data may surprise you as you move towards being data-driven. Exploring the data can help you to understand what's happening when your business is performing at its best, and it can help you to stay there. So when your business is at its best, what is it doing? What's the focus? And where's the passion? Identifying your most valuable customer can help you to answer these questions. The first step is to listen to the customer voice in order to help you identify the sweet spot. There may be a difference in the value that you offer and the value that you think you offer. What you want to do is give your analysts the Play-Doh moment. You may not be aware of this, but Play-Doh was invented by accident. It was originally intended to be wallpaper cleaner. But the inventor's sister-in-law was a kindergarten teacher, and she says that the children in her class would love to play with it. So she added in some brightly coloured dye, took it into the kindergarten class, and the children loved it. Play-Doh itself is now a multi-million-dollar business. It's incredibly successful, all because of a completely different interpretation over the product and the solution. And the most valuable customer went from being wallpaper cleaners, people who wanted to clean their wallpaper, to being children in kindergarten, and perhaps adults as well, who doesn't love playing with Play-Doh from time to time. But you want to give people the same experience when they're playing with their data. Give your business its own Play-Doh moment by helping your business teams to have fun with their data. Help them to play with it and have fun with it, and perhaps they will find their own Play-Doh. So how can you do that? Listen to the customer voice. Listen to your customers because they can sometimes give you new customers. Data should be fun, and a great start is to get slicing and dicing your data, a bit like Play-Doh. So now I'm going to hand over to Dave, who's going to help you think about how you can have your own Play-Doh moment and have fun with your data and find some insights that you didn't see before.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks for that. This is great. So before we sort of launch into the next section, I think Laurel, I think you want to put up a survey for the team here in the group. So the first question is, what's your wish list for data sources? So I've been talking about, Jen's been talking about the importance of data in terms of calculating your MVC. So go ahead and check what you find would be the most valuable to you. And then secondly, is how long does it take for you to get the data that you want? And then there's your choices there. So thank you for that. So here's our results. So social data is, well, it looks like we got, it's a pretty even split, but social data and product category preferences are the two top choices there. It just so happens that I'm going to show you an example with social data, with some Twitter data today. So I'm glad that you guys answered that way. So that's going to be fun. And then how long does it take to actually get the data that you want? And for here, wow, look at this. This is a big dichotomy between, some three people said it's within a day, but some people said takes a month or so, and some people said unpredictable. That's typically, what we see is we don't so much see within a day. That's really great. Congratulations. We do see a month, or a lot of times we see it's just they just don't know. And if you don't know, you don't necessarily ask, because you're going to find a way to get it yourself. And that sort of lends back to the problem that Jen mentioned, or is about consistency. So everybody's sort of fending for themselves. Okay, so let's go and let's talk about. I'm going to show you, actually, based on some of Jen's comments here, and concepts about just how to the tools to calculate an MVC. So for today's presentation, we're going to create a semantic model. So the data model is very important. Jen mentioned in her talk that consistency, agility were really sort of key, and flexibility were some key sort of goals to be able to work with your customer data. And a data model really helps achieve those goals. And then Jen also talked about the fact that you need to enhance your own first-party data with third-party data to make it to enrich it, and to uncover insights that you may not have been able to uncover with just your own first-party data. And then also, what I'll show you is like how you can integrate data science and business intelligence together to really create a much better picture of your customers and your customer behavior. So once we are able to do that, I'll show you how we can use a data model to enhance your customer profiles with social media signals. And today I'll be using Twitter. I'm going to show you how we can use that influential data, that influence data, social influence data, to actually factor into your MVC scoring. So you can do an MVC that's a little bit more sophisticated. It'll be a simple example, but I think it'll be illustrative. And then we're gonna combine that influence data, influence sales data, and direct sales data to compute a better customer value score. So today what we'll be doing is that we'll be enhancing our customer profiles with Twitter data. I'm going to show you how you can do that. It's free, and it's something that you can do within your own organization with a little bit of coding, or a little bit of the skill. And I'm going to show you how to identify brand influencers you have, and then quantify their impact on sales using some data science techniques. So let's go and start. No more slides, but actually looking at what we're going to do in the product and the like. So I'm going to first build a data model on my online sales. Today we'll be working with a retailer. It's an online sporting goods store retailer, and we're going to be using that data to build a data model so we can explore that. And we're going to be obviously concentrating on our customers. I'm going to be using Tableau and Excel to explore those customers, and where they're buying and what they're buying. And I'm using two very different tools. I mean, Tableau and Excel. Tableau is more of a dashboarding tool, exploratory tool. Excel is somewhere where you might want to actually build a model to actually create your own MVC score. And so I'll show you how we're gonna use Excel to do that. We're going to enhance our customer profiles with Twitter data, and I'll show you how you can, playing to the agility card here, how I can do that right here, right before your eyes. So it's no good if it's not agile, and that's what our data model can give us, is that agility. At the same time, our data model, of course, is delivering consistency, so everybody's speaking the same language, regardless of whether they're using Tableau or Excel. I'm going to use some ML. I'm not going to do it, but my data scientist has done it for me to actually calculate a sentiment score, and then use that sentiment score to about our brand, about people who have mentioned our brand online, who are our customers, to actually calculate an impact of social influence on sales. And we're going to factor that into our sales data. And then and we're going to combine those direct sales data with the influence sales data, the calculated data, the ML calculated data, to factor in and create a better MVC. Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be using our own AtScale platform to do that. So I'm going to be using our AtScale platform as the data model environment. So we're going to create the data model in AtScale. We're going to be talking to Google BigQuery as our data warehouse. The data is all coming on the Google Cloud Storage. That's our storage access engine. That's where it's all landing. And so I'm going to use the AtScale multi-dimensional engine to actually create that data model. And then I'm going to expose that to my BI tools, to Tableau and Excel in today's example, in today's demo. And of course, I've also shared that same semantic layer with my data scientists who used it to calculate that sentiment score for Twitter. Why a data model? Well, a data model, and this is just an example of one that is based on our TPC-DS model. But why a data model? It's what Jen was talking about. It's about simplicity and agility. It's the ability to create a semantic layer that is business friendly and data scientist friendly, so that you can take that business user or that data scientist out of the role of having to be a data engineer and just let them deal with the data in the terms that they understand, measures and dimensions, simple English terms and business terms, without having to wonder about how they were calculated. That gives us a single source of truth, regardless of how we're consuming, whether it's Tableau, Excel, Power BI, you name it, or whether it's through a Jupyter notebook. If we're all working off of the same data, we're much more likely to derive the same types of insights and have consistent analysis. And it's not just about being consistent, it's also being safe. Certain roles in the company need to have different rules for accessing data. Certain people may not be able to see a customer's email address or Twitter handle, for example. And that's important to be able to apply those kind of rules so that we can safely allow our business users and our data scientists to use the data and use the data that they're able to see or should be able to see. Okay, so let's get out of slides for a second here, and let's start and look at our data model. This is a data model that's already built. Just to give you a little bit of an orientation, if you want to get an AtScale demo, I encourage you to go to our website and click on the "Give me a demo" link, and we can give you a more complete demo. So today I'm not going to be selling AtScale. I'm just going to be using the AtScale platform to actually define the model. Just so you can see here, the green bars and the green boxes, these are what we call conformed dimensions. This is a big part of creating a model. Having a common dimension, date dimension, for example, where, especially for retailers, where you have a retail calendar, especially now that we're entering the holidays, that is different for every year and every holiday season. And so it's really important that everybody is reporting on time and rolling up data on time the same way. So the date dimension, the conformed date dimension, and all its hierarchies and roll-ups, super critical. Of course, the customer dimension, Jen's been talking about that from the start, right? We're going to focus a lot on that customer dimension. That's really important. And this looks like a very simple customer dimension, but it's actually pretty deep. And I'll show you that when we build this model in just one second. Now, products. Everybody needs to have a product hierarchy, as well as an organizational hierarchy. So you can see very quickly that those types of concepts, very obviously business friendly and obvious to the business, but actually to define those and define those consistently in an era where we have BI tools where you can sort of make it up as you go along, it's super critical. And so having a data model and a single semantic layer to define these is really how you can drive that agility and consistency. So, so let's go ahead and let's build our own data model today. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new data model. I'm going to call it my best customers. Okay, so I'm going to create my best customers model. We call them a virtual cube. And here I have my blank canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and now pull some data onto this canvas to start to model it. Once I model it, I'm going to then explore it with Tableau and Excel. So that will be in a few minutes. So the first thing I said is that I'm first going to look at my data sources. And what I mentioned to you is I'm using BigQuery today for this demonstration. So what I'm doing is I'm actually looking at all my data on BigQuery, and I'm looking at, and I see that I have a sales log. So this is just a table in BigQuery that has all my sales. And if I double click it, what I can do is I can see exactly a little preview of what that looks like. So you can see I have my orders. I have my sales reasons. I have things like product info, my order quantities. I have my dates, my currency, all the stuff that you would normally expect to see on customer sales. You can also see I have my customer key here, of course. So we'll be spending more time on that later. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is to analyze my sales is obviously I want to be able to know what people bought. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over my order quantity column from my Google data set, and I'm going to call it order quantity, and I'm going to put it into a folder. So what AtScale is going to do in this case is we're creating that semantic layer. So we changed that lowercase order quantity column name into something that's a little more human readable. I chose to, and AtScale figured this out, to sum all my orders as I aggregate them. So that will happen automatically. And I decided to put that order quantity into a folder called sales metrics. So now if I look at my preview, I have my very first measure. There's sales metrics as a folder and my order quantity. Folders are very important too in terms of organizing your metrics and your dimensions. So that's another part of that semantic layer, is just how you organize your metadata. So let's go ahead and let's pull in sales amount. I definitely want to have that, and I definitely want to put it into a folder, and I'll do that. Okay, so now I have a couple measures. Now we talked about conform dimensions and how important that was for consistency. So let's go and let's pull onto my canvas some of my conform dimensions. And in AtScale speak, we have a library for those. So remember I talked about my date dimension. Well, there's all my different hierarchies. I have a week hierarchy, I got a month hierarchy, I got a retail 445 hierarchy. I got lots of different ways of drilling down and sorting by time. I also have my customer dimension, and I'll pull that, and I'll also pull on for this demonstration my product dimension. Okay, so I have my dimensions on my canvas. So now how do I use these conform dimensions for this model? Well, it's very easy because I can just take these keys and link them up to my model here. So I'll take my customer key and I'll start with the customer, since the customer is very important in today's demo. And what I'm seeing is I'm creating a relationship between my sales log table and my conform dimension called customer. Now, as soon as I did that relationship and I made that connection, what happened over here is you see in my dimensions, I actually have a bunch of information that came in on that customer, including my email and my Twitter username, which we're going to use later on. And you can see also that we have a location and a hierarchy for just where my customers live and where they buy. So how did that all happen just from that little relationship? Well, if I double click on customer dimension, what you can see is that the customer dimension comes from another table in Google BigQuery, dim customer, that has some keys. And it also has relationships to other hierarchies or other conform dimensions, like my location or geography dimension and my gender dimension. And my geography dimension has itself its own built-in data model. So you can see that I can build upon these objects, upon these different references, and all of a sudden I can build very complex conform dimensions, but make it very easy for a modeler to be able to attach those to new data sets. So I got a bunch of data for free. So let's do the same thing for product. And now in product, now you can see the product hierarchy has now been emulated right here in my metadata, and that's due dates. Dates are always tough. I have orders and I have shipping. I have order dates and I have ship dates. So I have lots of dates. Almost everything is a date. You could have dozens, hundreds of different things that you're measuring by time. So what I can do is I can just connect up my orders, and I can use what we call a role-playing dimension, and I'll do one for shipping too. So by doing that, now what I see over here under my date attributes folder is I see I have order date, and there's my hierarchies for order date as well as for ship date. So I have a pretty decent semantic model now. In today's data, as Jen mentioned, it's like, you have data that's coming from all over the place. Sometimes it's in columns, sometimes it's in JSON in columns. So I have some product information data that's actually key value pairs. It's JSON. So with AtScale, what I can do is I can actually explode out those columns or that nested data by just telling, in this case, AtScale, about what the keys are that I want to pull out for that JSON data. So I pulled out color and style, and I'll turn those into dimensions like so. So now I got a pretty good model here. I got my color and style, my products. One more thing before we go and start to explore this data. Let's define a drill through path. So what's a drill through path? I'm going to call it customer details. So a lot of times, Jen also mentioned that you need to be able to drill through or drill down. And for me, I sometimes need to see what those customer records look like to really figure out what's going on. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pull in my customer name. Now, with this platform, if I didn't have the ability to see customer name, I wouldn't be able to do what we're doing here. I'm a super user, so I'm able to see my customer name as well as where they live. And for me, I'm going to create that view. Now, other people who, if they can't see that view, they're not going to be able to access it, even on a drill through. I'm also going to add my email and Twitter username, and I'm also going to, of course, put in how much they ordered and what they actually bought during each sale. So now I have a drill through. So I'll show you how I use that in a second. So we're now ready to go and explore this. So I'm going to go ahead and publish our best customers virtual cube, and just did that. And what I now have here is I have the ability to actually go and look at best customers. Best customers is now what we call a virtual cube. It's now a data model on top of my Google BigQuery data warehouse. So I didn't have to do any programming. I didn't have to do any ETL. All I'm doing now is logging in this case, into AtScale. That's my semantic layer. That's my semantic engine. I'm going to pull up that metadata and pull up that view that we just defined in AtScale Design Center. So remember all those folders here? So what you see is what you get. There's my sales metrics. Remember I had my order quantity and sales. Remember I had color and style. And you remember I had my product hierarchy, and I also had my customer and my customer geography hierarchies. So there it is. It's not tables and columns. There's no modeling I need to do in Tableau to do this. So without a semantic layer, without a data model, you'd have to do that data modeling right here in Tableau. And of course, everybody's going to do it a little bit differently and not going to have that consistency. So let's go and look at our sales amount. I'm just going to double click it. That ran a live query against Google BigQuery. Let's look at it by product so we can see what we're dealing with here. Again, live query here. And what we see here is, let's just do by top. It looks like we have a sporting goods store, and our bikes are our most lucrative product right now, just based on sales amount. Remember, I created that in JSON, we had color and style as product attributes. Well, I can now just double click on color, and all of a sudden in BigQuery, it's going to run a BigQuery, and it's going to split out all my product sales and sales amount by color. Kind of a silly thing, but it's illustrative, and I'll show you why it's interesting in a second. But that's all happens with the data model. The SQL behind this was actually fairly complex, but to our users, to the Tableau user, they have that semantic layer and they're able to do that exploration. So what's it look like in a different platform? So let's look at it in Excel. So how do I access that same semantic layer in Excel? Well, I can just use the built-in a connector for analysis services in Excel, and I'm going to be able to look at that same semantic layer. So let's go ahead and click next here. I'm going to look at my best customers project, and there's my new best customers cube. So there it is right there. I just defined it literally 5 minutes ago. And I'll go ahead and I'll create a pivot report in this case. Now, what we're doing is that we're not exporting data into Excel. What we're doing is that we're actually running live queries and only pulling back the data that is needed in Excel. So by clicking on my metric, sales amount, and my color, now I have the product by color right here within my Excel spreadsheet. And this is all live data. So Jen also talked about how difficult, or one thing to consider is how are you going to refresh your analysis? Well, to refresh my analysis, all I need to do is say data, refresh all, and everything will be refreshed here. And if I like, I can build a very rich model just by accessing these cell level data. So look at what I just did. That actually used this metric, my metadata, by color blue, and then now that is a separate cell that I can use in the midst of any of my other calculations. And remember, Jen also said, sometimes I need to drill through. Like, for example, let's say that I want to drill through on all my customers that bought a blue product. You see that customer details? That's what I defined in that data model. And so now what I can do is I can see exactly who bought a blue product, and including their email address, because in this case, I can see it. Not everybody could see that. And that's customer PII, and I can see that some of my customers have a Twitter handle. Okay, so let's go back and flip back to Excel, back to Tableau here, because we're talking about figuring out our best customers. So let's go and let's look at our best customers. Let's just be simple and let's look at it by sales. So let's go ahead and I'll add in my sales amount like I did before. And this time, I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to look at my customer names. So let's look at my customers by sales. I'm going to look at customer name and I'm going to drop it into the filter pane, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my top 10 customers here. So I'm going to say top and 10 by sales amount and do that. So that's this is a top 10 query that I'm doing here. Again, that's all against BigQuery. And I'll double click on customers so we can see who the heck they are. So there's my top 10 customers. You know what? I also want to look at just my top 10 customers. I want to be recent. So let's go and look at my my top 10 customers for my last year, for the last year. So let's look at 2020. 2020 has been a crazy year. So let's just look at 2020. So there we go. There's my top customers in 2020. And if I just go ahead and sort by them, this is my top customers by sales. That's very, very simplistic. And you know what we could do is we can integrate some data from Twitter and see not just who my top customer is by the amount that they bought. Obviously, Larry Munoz bought a lot from us in the last year, $25,000 worth. But we may also want to be able to look at who, in terms of social influencers, might have actually influenced other people to buy in our web store. So for that, we can use Twitter. And in Twitter has a cool thing. They have an API that you can sign up for free. And you can also subscribe to what they call a fire hose, Or there's also a third option, which is a Twitter stream, which gives you a sampling of what people are saying. And what you can see here is that I can actually, in input here, you can see this REST call, and you can actually input a query. And in this case, I'm going to look at all the tweets from our president, from Donald Trump. And you can see here's all Donald Trump's recent tweets. I just ran that live using a tool called Postman. Now, of course, you wouldn't be using Postman and doing this for each of your customers, but what you could do is you could write a little application that would run through your customer list, look up their Twitter handle, which we have for some of our customer profiles, and then append what the recent tweets were. In this case, what I'm going to do is that my data scientist is going to calculate a sentiment score for this. I could see that looks like Donald Trump is kind of mad here. So this is going to be a negative sentiment. And in other cases, there's a very happy sentiment there. So I'm going to hand this over to my data scientist, and what they're going to do magically is that they're going to give me a list of my customers with Twitter handles, and whether there's a positive or negative sentiment. And then they're going to use that and look at the sales around that time and to be able to figure out, they have to obviously mention our brand and be positive about our brand. And we're going to see if there's any lift that's attributed to that particular mention. And so my data scientist then has calculated what the lift is, or the sales lift, what was from that positive tweet from a particular customer. Now we're going to factor that lift into their sales so we can have a more complete view of their contribution. Okay, so magically, my data scientist gave me a file. And so what I'm going to first do is that I'm going to go to my Google BigQuery console here and move my Zoom stuff out of the way. And I'm going to add that file that my data scientist gave me to Google. So how am I going to do that? I'm just going to go ahead and click the create button here, create table button. Google BigQuery has a really nice way of uploading data. Now I can upload, it's a CSV file that my data scientist gave me, and I can just go ahead and browse that file on my course, on my system here. And there's my sales lift CSV file. So all I have to do is reference that. What's really nice is that if I do auto detect schema, Google BigQuery will automatically create that table for me with that schema. So there's nothing more that I need to do. I do need to say what it is. So I'm going to call it social media sales lift. And that will be my table. And I'll say create table. So now what that's doing is it's uploading that table into Google BigQuery. And you can see that there it is. It actually did it. And here's my table. You can see there's customer key, Twitter username, my last tweet date, so I can know recency, and then there's my calculated sales lift. And so if I do a preview, there's my preview of my data. So now I have my data in BigQuery, but it's not really consumable until I integrate it with my data model. So let's do that now. So let's go back to my best customers view and in Design Center. And here's my model yet again. So let's now integrate this brand new data into this existing data model and use it in Tableau. So we're going to go back to we're going to go back to, in this case, we're going to go back to our Twitter data here. I'm sorry, our data in BigQuery, and you can see there's that new table I just added, social media sales lift. So I'm just going to pull it onto my canvas just like that. So there's my data, and again, if I want to look at and do a preview of it, we could see it here. And there's what I just added literally two minutes ago. So then how am I going to use it? Well, I now have a multi-fact model. And well, all I need to do is connect up my customer key to my customer dimension, like so. And then I'll take my last tweet date and connect that up to my date dimension. And I'm going to prefix it with order. And now I've now unified my social media lift data with my sales data just by doing those clicks. So now let's calculate a new metric. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and create a metric for that sales lift. So let's go ahead and do that. There's my sales lift, and I'm going to put it into my folder. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it not visible to my BI tool because I want to calculate a new metric. So I'm going to calculate a whole new metric by calling it, let's call it, let's see, I'm going to call it direct and indirect sales. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. I'm going to choose it to be it's a dollar amount, so I'll choose the formatting there. I'll go ahead and put it into my sales metrics folder, and I can type in my formula. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my metrics here. I'll look at sales, and there's my sales amount. So there's my original sales amount for what the customer bought. And on top of that, I'm going to add in, there's my sales lift metric. So now I have a whole new metric that combines my direct sales with my indirect sales through my data science calculation. So now that I have that, I can go ahead and republish that virtual cube or republish that model, which now will make that new metric available to anybody who wants to use it. So let's go back to Tableau. And let me see here my my existing report. I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate that because I'm going to change it. And I'm going to go ahead and cause Tableau to do a refresh and watch what happens as I do that refresh. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to show me my brand new metric, and there it is, direct and indirect sales. So now I'm going to go ahead and replace that simple metric with my direct and indirect sales, and it's going to recalculate my users and my best users. So you can see that Larry is tough to beat. Larry still is my top customer, but what you can see is that my other customers have definitely changed, and in terms of what they shifted based on my new direct and indirect sales metric. So there you go. What I've just been able to do is come back and sort of pull it all together here. Is it using a multi-dimensional data model? I've been able to really show you how we can do have some real agility, in the same time promote consistency and also security. Remember all that customer PII data in one single place, whether it be Tableau or you're building extensive models in Excel. Everybody's going to get the same answer, and they're going to get it at the same time, with the same refresh frequency, with the same security attributes. And with BI and ML, BI and AI together, I actually got to see how I could augment my intelligence. I took my MVC and I made it better. And I combined my first-party data, my direct sales, with some third-party data, just by going and using social media free APIs to augment my customer profiles with their social media behavioral data. So that's really all there is to it. I would encourage you to look at Jen and Jen's website and her services. You can see more what Jen can do for you, and learn more about what Jen has done for other customers. And if you'd like to find out more about AtScale and how you can be more agile, I encourage you to hit our website. So Laurel, I'll send it back to you for some Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Jen. That was really great content. Apologies, everyone, for the audio issues that we experienced at the beginning. We will figure out a way to make sure that you're able to access that content in a way that's easy to understand after today's event. Just quickly, we're going to do some Q&A, but I want to mention that we have created a cheat sheet checklist to help you assess your customer data to identify your MVCs. It's available on our website, but I also put a link to download it in the chat for the webinar. So you can find that link there. Again, it's on our website, and we will send out the link to it when we send the recording to everybody after the event. So that was a thorough demo. So we have time for just a couple of Q&A. So I have one for you, Jen, first. Wondering how you can bring business teams together to understand the most valuable customer.
Hello there. So how do we bring business teams together to understand the most valuable customer? Well, I do think that sometimes sales and marketing teams can have very different understandings of what the customer looks like. And I think the way that I do it is I tend to just try and choose one metric and really explore it in detail. And I might do that within one sprint, an agile sprint of say 2 weeks. And then after that, in the next sprint, I'll choose another metric or series of metrics and do that in another sprint. So I think using an agile methodology and being very careful about picking a metric that's really got business value and will make a difference, you can help to try and pick it apart and understand what is really meaningful to sales and marketing teams so that they all come to the same definitions. I think that it's important to realize it's not just an exercise of documentation, for example. If there is a lack of documentation, that sometimes means a lack of understanding and organization. And it's good to try and collaborate and share insights, just using one or two metrics just to get started. And you'll find so much more than you initially realized.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Jen. We just have time for one more question, and I'm responding to a couple people in the chat. Dave, one for you. After seeing your demo, does AtScale, can you explain a little bit how, if and how AtScale works with other cloud data warehouses and BI tools than what you showed today?
Yeah, I didn't really show you what was happening behind the scenes. We were actually generating Google BigQuery queries automatically from that semantic layer, from that data model. But it works the same with sales, with Snowflake, with Azure SQL Data Warehouse, with Redshift, all the big cloud data warehouses. And data lakes for that matter, Databricks, for example. So that's all just plug and play. So nothing really changes there. In terms of the sort of the consumers, you saw me using Tableau and Excel, and Power BI works great. And really any BI tool that can speak SQL or MDX. And we also, I didn't show you the Python interface, but if you're a data scientist, you can use AtScale and leverage that semantic model through your ML and BI tools, through Python and through your Jupyter notebooks and the like. So lots of different options. Not much changes other than the fact that AtScale figures out the different dialects and figures out how to query them the most efficient way possible.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. So we are just about out of time today and going to wrap this up. If you do have questions that didn't get answered today or that occur to you after the event, please email us at hi@atscale.com, easy to remember. We'll make sure to include that address along with the link to the recording and the cheat sheet after the event. So thank you, Jen. Thank you, Dave. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody the next time.
Thanks, everybody.